Hi everyone, welcome to Bolen Sound Productions. On this episode I wanted to show you guys how I master with Joey Sturgis's new limiter, Finality Advanced. Now this limiter is not necessarily designed for mastering, but I thought it might be interesting to give it a try, and so far I've just been completely loving it. It's just been transforming my entire workflow and all my mixes and everything, and my masters are really coming out warm and just really kicking major ass. It adds a lot of awesome energy to it. But before I get into that, I wanted to just kind of show you guys the song and show you guys how I'm compressing it first with Slate Digital's FGX. I've done a couple videos on how this mastering compressor works already, but I'm going to show you guys how I'm using it going into it, and then the little trick I do coming out of it after the limiter. So here's a bit of the song. By the way, this is a new Enter the Paradox song called I Can't Sleep Tonight. It's going to be on our next upcoming album, which we don't have a release date for, but I've been working on the songs consistently, and I'm really excited about them, and this is probably going to be one of the future singles that get released very soon. So this has Slate Digital, the FGX running through it right now. Here's without it. Here's with it. It's just going to add a slight little bit of glue. Something else I really like about, so here's basically what I'm doing like in my mixes. I'm bussing everything out through master buses, and each master bus has its own bus compression. I'm using the SSL Master Bus G-Comp compressor, and I'm giving those just a slight bit of glue so that when I bring it into here, I don't have to hit it at -3 dB gain reduction, which is what a normal master would be hit at usually. And right now I'm just hitting it basically around -1.5 dBs to -2 at the loudest. The very loudest, it's going to go into -2.5. So now you're noticing it's kind of waving around a little bit right there. I kind of want that pumping in this mix to give it that extra little energy. It's not really like, it's not noticeable pumping where you would hear on like a bus compressor, but it is kind of waving around. And in my past videos where, let's say you were just doing a master with FGX, like you'd kind of want that needle to be pretty consistent right there. But I'm going to be sending all this into the next insert in my chain, which is going to be Finality Advanced. So right now I have just about -2 dB of gain reduction. The ratio is 2.1, -11.2 threshold, and I always like my release to be at 0.4 if I want to favor the snare a little bit more, or if I want to favor the kick a little more, I go to 0.3, and yeah, I have a pretty slow attack. All my drums are really punching hard. They're really loud in the mix when I bring it into here, because I notice, with the limiter, it's going to bring some of those transients down a little bit, so I just make sure to mix them really loud. Now moving on to the drums, of course, I'm talking about. Moving on to how I use Finality. So I lock it all in here with Slate FGX, and then what I'm going to do now is actually duplicate Slate FGX. The first one in my chain here, I'm going to turn off the level and the power here. I'm going to go to the last part of the chain, turn off the compressor here, and leave on the level and then the power to see the meters. And something else that's really important is I'm putting my ceiling at -3 on here. What I did to get there was just click right here, dither and ceiling settings. I have dither off, and I have output bit resolution in 24 bits. I'm in a 24-bit 48 kilohertz session. And yeah, I love the way the ceiling works on this. It kind of just brings all the elements in the mix that you work so hard to get to really just be heard. And also with that -3 ceiling, it also kind of, you know, brings the compression down in a way where it kind of widens everything out. And you know, you hear that term a lot, like stereo width. I try to do all the actual stereo width plugin stuff. I do it all in the mixing. And in the master, I just let, you know, the compressor kind of squash it down, not to destroy it, you know, but just to like slightly give it that little bit of glue so that it gets a little wider. And I notice whatever is panned super hard left and right at like 100, 100, the guitars I always have there, so the guitars get really wide as a result of that, and I love that. Okay, so now this is the same settings, it's just I have, you know, level turned off here, and the vice versa with the compressor first in the chain. Okay, now let's get to finality. So here we go. I'm going to turn it on. A little bit about the settings. I have my release all the way down to, you know, really make sure I'm getting all that movement. If it's a slower tempo song, I might put it at 0.4 to 0.13. Sometimes just right at 1.0 where it defaults to is great. In this case of the song, I have it at, you know, all the way down. And some of these other settings, just to explain it real quick. This look ahead makes sure it looks for extra peaks that are coming in the ahead with the look ahead. So it's really handy to have this, especially for mastering, because you don't want extra little peaks coming out, and this will control it. Aggro, when you turn that on, it makes whatever's coming through the signal more favorable to drums, which is exceptionally great for, you know, limiting and mastering. So that's why I was curious about using this, and so far it's just worked incredible. The color adds a little bit of saturation, which is this beautiful saturation that just evens out everything in a nice way and makes it hurt even more. Get a little bit more of those, like, you know, saturation, kind of like harmonic kind of sounds almost. It's, you know, mainly just like that color of saturation that sounds really smooth. And I also love this because I'm a nerd when it comes to like messing with little things by like 0.1 here and there, you know. Personally, I feel like that makes a big difference, going 0.1 on certain things. But the beauty of this is that I don't have to OCD out over it. I just click it, and boom, it's in. And you know, it's the perfect amount of color on every single mix, every single master I do, no matter what style it is. I just automatically put it in. It just always sounds good. I love it. Output, I keep it right at 0 because I'm going to be doing my ceiling on the last part of the chain here. The only time I'll bring this down is if I'm getting a little bit of woofiness as a result of the limiting going on. So I'll maybe bring it down just 0.1. Look ahead, I keep right where it is. Input gain, I keep right where it is. Everything else I literally keep right where it is. Keep the auto gain on, and then keep the mode on hard. I've just found with everything pretty much it sounds the best. And then on threshold, I found that the magic number for pretty much every single master I do is actually -2. But on this particular one, I felt like -2.1. It gave it that extra little boost. I'll show you guys what it sounds like just at 2 so you can see what's going on here and how much of a difference it's actually making.
Cause I can't sleep.
Here it is without finality on. So automatically it's giving it a lot of volume, as you can tell. So this is a great way of getting volume and getting everything just heavy, creating extra energy in your master, a lot of extra energy. I noticed it also brings up a lot of warmth that, you know, is can kind of get taken away through the digital process of mixing with all the digital plugins sometimes. But this plugin, for some reason, the second you just turn it up, it just adds this warmth and depth that is so desired in a mastering application like this. See how much quieter the drums get when I take aggro out?
In every situation, I thought we had it figured out. It
Here's with it back in.
turns out I dropped the ball again. I got a plan to get this straightened out. If I don't lose my mind in the end, I've had enough, but I can't stop. Is this not what you wanted? I haven't slept in days, never wanna change. Let's go solo.
Now that's without changing any other knobs or anything. That's pretty incredible if you think about it. A lot of times with the second you put on a limiter, it'll just completely take away the snare, which is very annoying, you know, because it's hard to assume how much louder you need to put the snare in the mix to make sure it really smashes hard, you know, in the master. This takes away a lot of that guesswork. And the last part that I like to do as far as like why I'm putting the you know, duplicating FGX and putting it after the limiter, it's once again because of the ceiling, but then also too I like having the transient control after the limiting, which you know, really helps to lock it in just the way I want. You know, on Slate FGX you have low punch and detail. This is kind of like highs and lows of your transients, and then you got your final gain level here where I have it up, my gain 2.2, I have my transients up like a little over 1 dB on the high and 0.1 on the low punch. On the low punch I barely ever put any because it kind of makes it too woofy, but 0.1 is fine because of that little extra oomph. I have my internal transient preserve up 0.5, or is that 5.0? Yeah, 0.5, and that gives a lot of extra punch too. Here, I'll show you what it sounds like at 0. This is really awesome for like dialing in the punch of the drums, the fullness of it. I like having this. Dynamic perceptions, if you have a mix that's too tight, and when you apply the mastering compression, it's going to, you know, smooch the mix more. This allows it to give more life and movement between all the elements within the mix. I don't need to do that because I've really taken account in my mixing process how, you know, I know exactly how everything's going to go into my chain, so I don't need to use this. When I master other clients' stuff, usually I'll put this up 0.1, maybe 0.2 if it really needs it, but it adds a little bit of extra life and movement, which is really great, while still achieving the glue factor that is so important in mastering. Okay, so here's why I thought that it needed a little bit of extra energy and a tiny bit of extra glue, because this is going to add a little bit of glue as well, but it's kind of like energy glue, if that makes sense. That's how I like to look at the threshold on a limiter in the mastering. And okay, so here's that 2.0. I'm going to go up just 0.1. Here we go. So much more energy and clarity, and just like the guitars, the trade-off between the guitars and kick, and like just the excitement of you know, the cymbal hitting.
I thought you said to never leave. I guess that was just. She's not by my side, and I can't deny that I can't leave. If both our dreams aligned, then we'd had enough, and I can't stop. Is this not what you wanted?
Okay, so what I'm paying attention to right now, the final little touch, is just watching this RMS meter. And a typical master is going to be anywhere between like negative 11 RMS to negative 8 RMS. For this style of music, it kind of can vary as far as like that's like the general area of where the level should be. So like I like it to be around -9 for most of the song, to be honest, because I feel like that's where I get more of that crystal clarity. Really heavy parts, -8, like right on the edge right there, just like it was in the breakdown. And some of the parts of the breakdown where it gets a little louder, it goes into -7.5. As long as you don't hear audible distortion, I let that slide. I brought in a lot of other masters just to check that out, to see where they're at. And the loudest parts of those songs are at like -7.5 too, and you don't really hear distortion, but it kind of depends. I use my ear. If I turn it down just to see if it takes away too much energy, then I'll leave it up. It's kind of just depends. It's not like you can't always follow the rule of thumb. You always have to rely on your ear, and for me, it's the most important thing. If I turn this down by 0.1 and energy is lost, then it's not going to work. But if I turn this down and clarity is achieved, then I'm going to keep that. So that's kind of the rule of thumb I go about it with that.
Dreams aligned and we'd be alright. Let's end this fight, 'cause I can't sleep. I can't sleep tonight. You're not by my side, and I can't deny that I can't leave. Both our dreams aligned and we'd be alright. Let's end this fight, 'cause I can't sleep.
Alright guys, well that concludes this episode of Bolen Sound Productions. Joey Sturgis, Tones, Finality Advanced, the plugin is out now. If you get this advanced plugin, you also get a light version of the plugin, which is really great too. For things that don't need as much transient preservation like cymbals, it works great on those. And so if you guys enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave me a like or a comment. And I look forward to hearing your feedback. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.